let me see here. That's a different choreographer. So what we try to do now is that we think we understand the generation part, you know, when they're working with imagery. So we think we have a tool that's been productive, using this way of getting them to articulate their process and understand the relationship between the different image systems. And now what we're trying to understand better is how the conceptualization changes over time. And one of the reasons I think that could be really interesting is that if an artist, from any field, starts out with, you know, it has an inspiration from some book that he or she read, or a film that he or she saw, or a piece of architecture, you know, perhaps they make something about that piece of architecture, and you see that figuratively represented in the piece, maybe. But chances are no, it's just the starting point. But it remains the starting point. It never disappears. It's fundamental to the piece. It makes transformations as you go along, maybe different features of that original idea, or maybe it gets kind of set aside, but it's in the material of the piece. But at the end of the, you know, in the program note, it'll say, this piece was inspired by, you know, this major piece of architecture, or this major book. And audiences look at the piece and say, where is that? But they don't realize that it's been through all of this transformation. And I think that if we could better explain, articulate the nature of that transformation, that in fact there are invariants. In other words, it was the same starting point. The starting point didn't change. But the work emerges as its own thing in the world. But if we better understand the shifting nature of this conceptualization in relation to the materials, this is really materials, that we have tools for helping people read what they think of as non-narrative work, for example, or abstract work. It's not really abstract at all. It materializes in things that are unfamiliar to you. But it has all of this mapped, it has many relationships in the background that are mapped into it. And I think we can reveal some of that mapping. And so, this is our attempt to, this is our current research attempt, which I won't, in other words, we're continuing to try to research the process. This has more to do with the conceptual evolution of the work, a kind of mind map, which I could talk about later if you wanted. But I think I should wrap it up and give you a chance to ask questions. This is a little 5-minute thing that was done on the news. It's a little video clip that we could, it depends on, you know, maybe we could look at this. It's a journalist, but after my discourse about this whole thing, it'll be interesting for me to see how well they do in reporting on what I've just talked about, and I think it'll refresh some of the things I've just said. So maybe it's worth looking at this. We could take the lights out because this is kind of dark. This is very dark, actually. Plus, you'll see some of the scientists.
Since 2003, McGregor has been collaborating with cognitive scientists to generate new understandings of creativity. While scientists have studied the visual arts, very little work has been done in the field of dance. Had you had any experience with contemporary dance before you started this collaboration?
I wasn't interested in dance at all, actually, and the first few experiences were really quite, not stressful, but intriguing. What I realised almost instantly was that I had absolutely no idea what Wayne was doing.
I want you to...
Could you hear what he said? It's okay, because his accent is, I know this. He said I had absolutely no idea what he was doing, and Phil was one of the first scientists we worked with.
Yeah, I want to do a task that takes an acoustic image and moves it into a visual image, and then we then work from that kind of choreographically, right? And to do that, we need...
One of the key ways the company devises movement is through tasks. Wayne sets problems which they have to solve.
Yeah, I'm just doing this to practice. Yeah? Okay. Right, so just find a spot.
The dancers are required to generate masses of material themselves.
In terms of your own creative process, it's very unique. And people think of choreographers and they might think of, you know, one single visionary.
Yeah.
Whereas here you're really allowing, you know, company to become such an integral part of that process.
I mean, I've been making choreography nearly 20 years, and so I've been in a lot of studios.
Yes, she's laughing. I mean, it's for the culture show at BBC.
Yeah, in a way, you know, what's exciting is about this collaboration with dancers where they bring you something new and you can see it.
See,
It
notebook,
sounds
body.
exhausting, the fact that you have to generate so much material yourself. I find it much more satisfying. I think most of us here certainly get a kind of big thrill out of that part, because that's the part that really brings us into it as kind of artists and collaborators as well.
It's really hard sometimes. I mean, I won't lie, you do get stuck and you feel like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm doing right now.
Dr. Phil Barnard has developed an innovative way of helping the dancers when they get blocked. FAR marks the first time the company have tried out these techniques.
My particular interest happens to be depression and understanding how depressive thinking works. And as most people know, depressive people tend to think about the same bad idea over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so finding ways of breaking that mental habit is in some sense what I do in my day job. And in this case, finding ways of breaking the habits that lead to repetitive movement structures is the same kind of problem.
Creating new movement is much more than instinct. Before the body can even move, the brain has to generate imagery.
I didn't really know until working with these cognitive scientists. There are lots of different types of image. You know, you can get a visual image, which you all know what that is, but we can also build acoustic images.
Phil Barnard's theory supposes that there are primarily 3 different types of image, each created through a different mental loop. One loop creates verbal or auditory imagery, what we hear in our head. Another loop creates visual imagery. This could be imagining the melody as a line or a shape. And the third loop is the deep schema, which creates images
intuition
based on
area.
instinct, emotion, and experience.
The first point of departure when you're moving is actually imagining.
Yeah.
So if you're always imagining in the same way, most likely you're always moving in the same way.
Yeah.
The dancers apply this knowledge to create more unusual imagery and produce more innovative forms of dance.
Did you have any background in science at all, or was this all new to you?
No, it was totally new.
So was that very daunting when you first started out?
It was very much like, what? So they really, at the beginning, they were willing to go to explain you everything.
It is a very challenging thing, and I have to keep kind of bringing myself back and saying, oh, am I on task? Am I really working within that loop? Or have I kind of drifted into what feels comfortable to me?
The science is radically transforming the way the company work, but it's a two-way process.
That's David Kirsch. Okay. I think that's a little clip, and you can tell me whether that helps me or not. It depends upon where you're coming from. But I think it rehearses, it reviews some of the same stuff in a very different context with the culture show. That's good, Carla. Thanks. Do you want to read that?